All right, Chaz, let's get right to it. The Cincinnati Reds just sprinted through the tape of the first half of the season with a homestand that featured back-to-back series wins against the Yankees and the Padres. And if it truly is about winning series, that's now 6 series wins in their last 7 opportunities. And it all has me thinking back a few weeks and kind of pondering a previous Power Stacks episode when you, Chaz, spoke with Guardians' longtime play-by-play man Tom Hamilton, who told you that Terry Francona's teams in Cleveland always seem to find themselves and play their best baseball in the second half of the season. There's a long way to go. I get it. But does it feel like, to you, Chaz, this team recently is trending in that direction, as Tom Hamilton predicted?
I think the Reds are good. Now the National League wildcard race is stacked. This is a particularly strong cast of characters in the National League wildcard race. You add in the trade deadline, factor in there as well how aggressiveness at the deadline could shape that race. But this just feels so markedly different for how it felt at the end of June of 2023. The word I always go back to describe the 2023 Reds in that summer was unbridled optimism. It was these young guys, and there was all this, everything was just so wide-eyed. And not to make this pun, but the quote I always go back to is Will Benson saying it was like the blind leading the blind. And there was some power in that because no one had been through it before. This is a team that knows it's good, that also, more importantly, or just as importantly, has guys who have won, who know what it looks like, who see very specific qualities in this team. There's still that next step into true playoff contender, but the Reds have made the step you wanted to see. The Reds are in this thing, and they have more than earned their way into the conversation.
You can say this. It was a fun homestand. Big red machine, big crowds. And those 2 series against the Yankees and the Padres, they had some moments. There was some good stuff. We live for moments, and we saw some of those things this week at Great American Ballpark. Welcome into Power Stacks, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. Coming up on the show this week, how one really bad day on the golf course set the stage for a history-making night at the ballpark. Also, he paces, he whistles, and he also did something one of his teammates said is bigger than most people realize. That story's on the way. And Tito said this way, he simply said, we missed him. Who is it? Who is him? And what did and what do the Reds miss so much when he is not in the lineup? All that's on the way. And we got a lot to cover this week. It's going to be fun. So let's start with the leadoff spot, Chaz. And I'll get right to that. The Reds had an off day this week. And Spencer Steer played golf. And he's one of us. He's human. He sat on the front 9. He shanked every shot to the right. But the observation from Steer and some of his teammates and golfing buddies was this, that bad golf swing may have been just what his baseball swing needed, because shooting baseballs to right field and right center field is good for Spencer Steer. And a day later, after shooting all those golf balls to the right, into the rough, out of the fairway, a day later, he had a 3-home-run game, 3 home runs in his first 3 at-bats. Where is Spencer Steer, and what about that night?
Well, it felt like kind of my original question or idea that I wanted to kind of talk with Spencer about was, what can a night like Friday night kind of do for you? Because the way the season has just been a grind for him, that battle for him, the shoulder injury that he dealt with last year impacted him in the spring, shut down, sped back up and talked his way onto the opening day roster, then played worse than he has ever played baseball in his life. And I talked to Steer about that, and you'll hear from Steer on that. And my original idea was what a night, again, like Friday night can do for him. But here's what I didn't realize. His .312 batting average since May 11th is the 3rd highest among National League hitters, with 150 at-bats during that time frame. So yes, Steer has gotten hot. but it is also a more sustainable stretch that you really don't realize just because there was that one whatever batting average that's still weighing down Spencer Steer's overall stats for the season. That awful stretch, and there was also another brief slump that he had in May. He says it helped him develop some new perspective. He's approaching this year different. Here's Steer on kind of the lessons he's learned, kind of a young veteran now in his third full big league season. What was the toughest moment, maybe individually?
Um, Probably the toughest moment was there was a stretch, about a week long stretch, where I started to, find some holes and get hits. But nothing was really clicking with my swing or timing. And then I found myself in another 0 for 20, 0 for 25. And I kind of just felt like it was, I was like climbing a mountain and just kept falling backwards. And every time I made progress, I just kept falling backwards. And I feel like I just couldn't find my footing. And I'd say that was probably the toughest part. And we were struggling as a team too, and I just feel like I wasn't pulling my weight. So just having those serious doubts of like, am I just not a good player anymore? And yeah, just fighting those mental battles. That was probably the toughest part, because we all want to be a good team, and we all want to win so bad that when you feel like you're not pulling the weight and the team not having success, like you take it even harder, and you kind of double down on yourself. And so yeah, I'd say just fighting that internal battle was probably the progress.
Do you feel like you had a turning point or a click type of moment or anything like that? Or a conversation that got you back on track?
To be honest, no. I just think it was like a slow, just steady climb out of it. Just like stacking good games, and like the numbers are what they are. Who cares what the numbers look like? I just was trying to find little wins in each at bat. Like, man, that was an awesome take on a slider off the plate. I got out, but like, man, like I can take that and run with it. And I lined out to right, but like, God, that felt good. Or out of 10 pitch at bat, didn't get the result I wanted at the end, but like I was just taking those little victories and just slowly finding my way back to a spot where I felt like, I got a chance. Like, I'm on time, my swing feels like I'm getting in the right positions. So I think it was just a slow, steady, just find my way out of it.
Because it felt like it was a guy who just found it overnight, but he says there was so much more to that. And then we'll hear more later from Austin Hayes talking about himself. But Hayes also talked about the team at length, and he said Matt McClain and Spencer Steer, or he called them Matty and Spence, they went through it for a while, and now they're the two hottest guys of the team. He continued that when you all buy into the fact that it really can be and has to be 1 through 9, and when that shows up, he said that's what makes a team really special. And there's something to the fact that two of the guys who were going through it the most are now a big part of the success that this team's having. From a statistical standpoint, it helps, but then also there's a signal there as well.
There was such a crazy fun night at the ballpark to watch Steer with the 3 home runs and to have a legit opportunity at history and 4 home runs. He's not going to be a 3 home run guy much in his career. I doubt that. But the bigger picture that he just described to you, that's where the Reds picked this up. The bigger picture is Spencer Steer is back to swinging the way that he can. He's not doubting himself, as he said, whether he's a good player anymore. He's back swinging confidently, and he's starting to get the results right now. He got the results on Sunday as well with the 9th inning line drive up the middle off Robert Suarez that tied that game in the 9th inning and gave the Reds a chance to come back and win.
And Spencer Steer is a guy, too, who I think can hit 30 home runs in a season. Like, not that he's going to hit 40, but I think that he can get to 30. Like, I remember in spring training, I wrote an article. The Reds didn't get that big right-handed bat that everyone kind of knew they needed. And for them, that's going to have to be CES and Steer this season. Obviously, CES has not had the year that anybody's hoped. But a big part of the plan was that Spencer Steer would continue to develop into that style of guy. So will he hit 3 home runs again? Probably not in his career. But I do think that steady power is something this lineup has really always been counting on. And when he delivers, it goes a long way.
All right, Chaz, you know you have to do it. You have to take care of your car. You can't wait until the problem is bigger or too big. You got to get it checked out now, and we've got the place for you. You know it. It's Ken's Spin Automotive, a full-service automotive repair shop based in Cincinnati, Mount Carmel, right off 32, the cheapest and most thorough oil change and inspection deal in town. That starts at $35. A licensed Continental Tire dealer. So as I said, you got something that's been bugging you. You know at some point you're going to have to get it checked out. Don't wait. Go get it checked out at Ken's Spin Automotive. You can call Paul, the phone number being 513-470-8110. You can stop by 529 Old State Route 74. Tell them you heard about it on Power Stacks. You can also go to the website, kenzspenautomotive.com, KENZSPEN automotive.com. And what we're asking the Power Stacks community, Chaz, is to support the people and the businesses that are supporting us. Ken Spen Automotive, first to sign on, and we appreciate that.
You know, Ellie De La Cruz looked like he had just stopped by as he was zooming around the bay. Was that good? Did that joke land? What would you rate that joke?
It depends on your demographic, I think. That was kind of a dad joke, even though you're not.
You're right. That's usually not my style.
Not your style, man. It was a nice try, though. We'll wrap it up and say thanks to Ken Spen Automotive for the support, and please support them as well and go get that ride of yours checked out sometime soon. Time now for Tito's Take. And we're going to start with a story that Terry Francona told last week. And I always appreciate this, Chaz. I appreciate it when someone in his position is willing to offer up a story like this, to pull back the curtain a little bit, to not always be the what happens and is said in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse. He doesn't have to share these things and tell stories, but he told one about a meeting he had with Brady Singer and Nick Martinez after a rough start for Nick Martinez with the debut of Chase Burns. And it was about the schedule, and it was about somebody getting off of their regular schedule for their next start and their work between starts. And he said, Nick Martinez said, I'll do it. Meaning Brady Singer can stay on his normal days, can start on his normal day. I'll push mine back. And you know what? In the meantime, I'll throw out of the bullpen because I didn't throw that many pitches in that bad start that I had. Terry Francona shared that because he appreciated it, but it was also greatly appreciated by Nick Martinez's teammates, and indirectly, I think, got Martinez off to one of the best starts or the best start of his career, right?
The beauty of the near no-hitter was that, he did something to help the team, and in the process, he helped himself, because getting in the bullpen for a couple games did truly help things kind of click back into place with Martinez. That's real. That's an intangible thing, but it's real. Also, he helped the Reds win a game on Monday. The bullpen, we can talk about bullpen depth after kind of the top two another time. That's kind of a concern about this team, even though this is a very pro-Line Richardson podcast. But they needed high leverage help. Martinez provided that on Monday. That inning he volunteered to offer, pitched on Friday. And one more thing before we get to some sound, Tom Browning's no-hitter, there was a rain delay. That's just the legend of the no-hitter, right? This whole story would have become lore if it was a no-hitter for Nick Martinez. I'm still going to remember it as lore. I think Nick Martinez has had a very successful Reds career. And when it's all said and done, this is going to still be the first story I tell about Nick Martinez. Because what it's going to be in 5 years is, man, Nick Martinez was really underrated with the Reds. You remember that one time he volunteered to come out of the bullpen twice and then pitched 8 no-hit innings against his old team? And that doesn't go unnoticed at all. What's up, Brian?
And it should be pointed out that before the 8 no-hit innings, those 2 bullpen appearances were 3 no-hit innings. So the dude was working on 11 consecutive no-hit innings when you add in the bullpen work.
as Emilio Pagan said, and I think multiple people, this was kind of like clubhouse conversation. He's the only man in the world who can do that. And there's something to that. So let's now get to Pagan on Nick Martinez and what he showed kind of all week.
It's we have a little award that we can win as a pitching staff that DJ gives out. It's called the Rock of the Week. It goes to, the guy who doesn't always have to be like the best results or whatever, but it's kind of like, what we're driving to be. And he's won it now a couple times. He won it this past week. Now, I mean, I said it when we first signed him, when we kind of signed together there. I was like, man, what he does is one of the more impressive things I've seen from afar. Admired of him as another player, but then being on his team and watching him about his business, it's special. It's truly special. There's a reason why, he's making what he's making. He's worth every penny and more because it's hard to do what he just did. I mean, he's given us 3 innings out of the pen after a short start, and then went out and almost threw a complete game no-hitter against one of the better teams in the game. Regardless of how they're playing right now or whatever, he's special, man, and I'm glad he's on our side.
And hear him talk about how he's making what he's making. Like, it's something he's earned. I'll say this too, like, watch the playoffs. Martinez is a perfect playoff pitcher, and the Reds have to get there. But what he just did this past week is like exactly what teams are dying for. Like, the Dodgers are out here starting Ben Kasparius as an opener. You don't think they'd love to get 5 from Nick Martinez and then use him out of the bullpen in 2 of the next 3 games or something like that? Like, the Dodgers would do a lot to have Nick Martinez, but the Reds are more than happy to have him. He is, again, a perfectly built for the playoff pitcher. And when you condense a week into a massive critical week for a team, he can kind of not quite take it over, but more than put his stamp on it as well.
The lore that you will recall one day when you're sitting around with those grandchildren goldsmiths is that Nick Martinez went from his worst start of the season, rock bottom for him this season, to his career best start with those 2 bullpen games in between, volunteering to go off routine, volunteering to sacrifice his schedule and his routine to get back in the bullpen at a time when the Reds needed something, having just recently lost Graham Ashcraft. He became a really good option in the bullpen. And so that story, and hearing Pagan talk about it, has been kind of the buzz of the clubhouse this past week. And certainly after Martinez made that start against San Diego and took the no-no to the 9th inning. I was with Jose Trevino talking about something else, and when I brought up Nick Martinez, Trevino lit up about Martinez, and this is what Trevino said about the sacrifice of the Reds' veteran, starter, highest paid player, all those things, what he showed and what Trevino saw.
He could easily just be like, no, I'm a starter, right? I'm not going to do that. But, talk about someone who tucked their ego away for the best of the team. I mean, that's a true teammate right there. Like a huge, and it's bigger than what people actually think it is. We needed a guy, and he was like, yeah, I will gladly do it. And he was like, I'll gladly do it again. So, that's huge for him.
It was bigger than what most people think that it was. So those words play in a clubhouse, in a big league clubhouse, and Nick Martinez did that this week. Chaz, are you a Nicky Smiles or a Nicky Tight Pants kind of guy?
I don't know about Nicky. What's the Nicky Tight Pants story?
That's his other nickname besides Nicky Smiles because of obvious
tight pants.
Yeah,
I have one more thing about the no-hitter. I talked to him about kind of the near no-hitter. Sorry. The superstitious element of all that.
Yeah.
And how, because he didn't want to engage with any of it. And so I said, were you trying to talk to people? And he goes, well, were people going near you? He said, well, I'm a unique case here because most people sit on the bench. No one goes near them. There's silence. Martinez is pacing up and down. So, and also he's not in one place long enough to talk to somebody. So none of the rules apply just because of the rules of the pacing. So that kind of created a unique dugout dynamic with Nicky Smiles, Nicky Tight Pants' no-hitter.
The pacing in the dugout has been well documented because you can see it on the television broadcast. What I found out this week, because I didn't know, was the whistling. Spencer Steer brought up the whistle that Martinez, as he paces in the dugout, the whistles to kind of keep himself engaged in the game. The other thing that he said, that you can obviously and clearly see about Nick Martinez, he was talking about that night. He said, I was jacked up.
Yeah.
Nick Martinez is always jacked up, but he was jacked up for that game, and man, did it look good. And it became a big story in the Reds clubhouse.
Sorry, one more thing, and I have talked to Nick Martinez about this too, because you mentioned the whistling. I've talked to Nick about this. So I've covered a lot of sports games. I've also been to a lot of sports games at all levels. Nick is the most acoustically impressive clap. Like when he claps for a teammate, when he goes like, here we go, Benson, and he claps, it rings. Like it is like the voice of an angel, but the clap of an angel. So I'd like to publicly share what I've told Nick in the clubhouse, which is the claps, 10 out of 10, man.
You appreciate his claps and his whistles. And certainly right now, the Reds appreciate the way Nick Martinez has played and what he did, especially this week. All right, time now for our Reds milestone moment. And this one was easy. It was the debut of Chase Burns. You documented your conversations with Chase Burns right before he gets the call. He steps in against the New York Yankees and does what he did, strikes out the first 5, 6 of the first 7. What a night for Chase Burns at Great American Ballpark. What a way to start his big league career. And he's up next as the Reds start their next series in Boston against the Red Sox. And this week's Reds milestone moment, Chaz, is brought to you by Glenville Avenue, the baby blanket designed by parents who wanted something better. This is big, a new partner for Power Stacks, Glenville Avenue. We appreciate the partnership. They're going to sponsor the milestone moment. So parents, grandparents, your friends are having kids, listen up, because this is for you, because they do milestone blankets to capture your baby's growth and achievement. Why is it better? Well, it's softer, it's safer, organic, hypoallergenic, and dyed with skin-safe colors because babies deserve the best. It's 28% larger than your standard blanket. It will grow with your child. And Chaz, to get a real feel for this, you really need to see this on the website. So check it out at GlenvilleAvenueLLC.com. GlenvilleAvenueLLC.com. When you do, and you get a look at the product, use the promo code STACKS, and you're going to get 10% off your first order. So as we said before, we appreciate the support, and we hope the Power Stacks community will support the businesses who support us. You probably got a baby shower coming up you got to go to, right? You got a baby shower, you need a gift, Glenville Avenue.
One of these days I'll tell the story about the baby blanket that my parents lost. I know the story just having heard about how sad I was. So to create that level of attachment, visit our friends here.
Yeah.
Imagine how sad it would have been if it was one of these.
I feel like I know you a little bit better, and I can sense the heartbreak in your voice over this blanket. I can't wait for this story. Your blanket, that's going to be a tough one. But right now, Glenville Avenue sponsoring our milestone of the week. Check out the website and support that business as well. Time now for Charlie's Notebook. If you can pull yourself together emotionally, Chaz, after the baby blanket call, I'd like you to get into the notebook. As we said, the Reds hit the halfway point this week.
There's a Phineas and Ferb reference here that you're not ready for. So just keep going with where you're at.
I'm not ready for Phineas and Ferb. But as the Reds hit the halfway point, and your Seven Hills math will tell you that's 81 games in the season, as they hit game 81, it was notable that Austin Hayes had only played in 31 of the 81 games the Reds had played. As he made this most recent return from the injured list, his manager simply said, "We missed him." The Reds miss Austin Hayes, and they've had to miss Austin Hayes more than they planned to or wanted to this season. What about Hayes? What does he mean? And his most recent return?
He changes everything. Like, I'll equate it to, like, he's not Jamar Chase. I'm not saying he's Jamar Chase. These are different things. But when Jamar Chase is on the field, like, you have to know where he is at all times. There is a presence and a spotlight there because of what he's capable of. Hayes is not Jamar Chase, but Hayes is a similar spotlight player in the Reds lineup. Like, what has the theme of, from a schematic perspective, the season been? We talked about this for the last 2 months. Teams wake up in the morning and say, how do we get as many left-handed pitchers to face TJ Friedel and Ellie De La Cruz as possible? Now that actually is extending because TJ's colder and Gavin Lux is hotter. The Padres had it. What can we do to get as many left-handers against Ellie and Gavin Lux as possible? What you need, what it's always come down to, is there a right-handed hitter who can punish pitchers out of that strategy? It is a football thing. Like, what can you do to bully teams out of doubling Jamar Chase or bully teams out of blitzing? What can you do to counter to the counter? Because when you unlock that, then you're gold. And when Hayes has been healthy, he has been that turnkey. He has been the guy that punishes teams that dedicate themselves to stopping Ellie and Lux or Ellie and Friedel, but he hasn't been on the field enough. And we know how much the Reds need and have always needed another right-handed bat. From a production standpoint, Hayes has been that guy, and that's what's made this season so crazy for him. He bet on himself, big expectations. When he's been prove-it deal, when he's been healthy, he's been playing as well as ever. But then he keeps getting hurt. Baseball's a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster for Hayes this year more than anyone, especially because of how much the Reds need him. And because, again, he's on a prove-it contract. I asked Hayes, what's this roller coaster of a season been like for you?
Someone told me when it was my first full season in 2021. I kind of been up and down in the big leagues, but never had a true full year yet, even the COVID year. They said every season is different. It's going to be different with your family. It's going to be different with a team. Maybe you get traded. The game is the same, but every season is different. And now that I'm, like 6 full years into my career, I start to understand that where everybody wants to come in healthy and you start swinging it and you play great from start to finish. But you play every day. It's a long year. Things happen with your health. Things happen with your family. Things happen with teammates. I've been through a trade now. I've gotten released. I've signed with a new team and come in. Like, I've seen a lot of change throughout my career. And I think you just understand how difficult the game can be at times. It's relentless. The game doesn't really care about your feelings. You got to remain mentally strong and always have a certain level of positivity and optimism to your outlook on everything every day. Whether you're rehabbing or whether you're in the lineup, and you're grateful that you're in the lineup playing every day, but you might be going through it. You might not be playing well. You got to remain confident, be positive, be optimistic, and that's just where I find myself again this year. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to play for the Reds. They signed me this offseason and brought me in after the stuff I went through last year, and I got off to a strong start, feeling really good, and had a little bit of a bump in the road. Remain confident, remain positive, be optimistic. It's going to turn around quick. And I came back. I was playing really well. And then the foot thing happened, and it's like you can't let that bring you down, and you start to question, like, why me, or why does this always happen? Remain optimistic. Okay, I can get back in this amount of time. I can still play this many games. The team is still playing really well right now. You got a great chance to go to the playoffs this year and do some really big things. Being able to sit here in the dugout and just watch our team from a different perspective, being hurt. I see the way we're playing the game and how we're talking in the dugout, and it gets me really, really excited to play for the rest of the season and now step back into it, So just trying to live in that. It's something I just continue to try to get better at throughout my career. Even when things aren't going well, personally, just remaining confident, positive, and optimistic every day. And that's how I feel right now. I'm confident that I'm back. I'm feeling good. My optimism is that I'm going to play a healthy second half for this team, do big things for them, and we're going to keep playing great baseball and get some more guys back and do some really good things. So that's where I'm at right now.
Over the course of that interview, which went on after that, Hayes went on to use the words positive, confident, and optimistic 19 times. There is the frustrating part of what this season has been for him. I mean, who financially has more on the line this season than Austin Hayes? But I think you can feel like he either he means what he's saying, or he's so in it and he's so understanding that this is just what the focus has to be, or else this just isn't going to work, and you're just going to be in a headspace, a bad headspace where you can't be productive. It's one of those two things, and regardless, there's some power in how he's feeling. It is genuine, it is authentic, and that's where he's at heading into a second half, where he has the ability to help the Reds level up, maybe even a tick farther, a team that was playing its best ball before Hayes even returned.
Found that ball off his foot, missed about a month, and certainly the foot didn't respond the way that he thought it would. And at that point, then I think he realized, the team realized, and he said this week, they just kind of backed off and said, look, we've got to take our time to get it right. And so he missed a good amount of time, but he did put in a good amount of time on his rehab and said he essentially checked all the boxes he needed to check, that everything went well on that. Still going to be maybe a little bit to get his timing back and get back in the groove maybe that it was in before. But you're right, man, do the Reds need that bat? They can use that, and they think Austin Hayes is the guy. So we'll see as this continues on. But certainly better health in the second half for Austin Hayes would be a better story for the Cincinnati Reds. Having the Big Red Machine guys at the ballpark all weekend long was fantastic. It was good to relive those memories and see those players reunite. You said, I thought you summed this up perfectly, that it really felt like everything was for them, that they weren't just being showcased for fans. The celebration was for them. They did that, obviously missing some of their teammates who've passed, and the tribute video that they had on Saturday for the members of the staff, the roster, the front office who are no longer with us. That was a moving part of the celebration. And not long after that, Reds country and the Reds family took another one of those moments where you just kind of step back and go, oh no. It was announced on Saturday that Dave Parker passed away. Reds great, Cincinnati guy, passed away roughly a month before his scheduled Hall of Fame induction in Cooperstown, Chaz. And this was difficult. We know that Dave Parker had battled Parkinson's the last decade plus, and that became a big part of his story. But the announcement that came in late December, early January about the Hall of Fame, that was one of those votes and one of those announcements that we see from time to time that everyone, I think I can say, felt pretty good about that finally happening for a player the caliber of Dave Parker. Is that fair?
Dave Parker actually and I had a mutual friend, a very close mutual friend. His name is Ardell Barkley. He passed away as well. He was my Little League coach. He was my brother's Little League coach. My brother and I served on his staff, Ardell's staff, for 4 years. Between the two of us, Ardell was at big family functions for the Goldsmiths. Dave Parker showed up to a few practices over the years. He just played, he just coached. And so that's my connection there. The swagger and fear that he imposed on the field seemed to be contagious as well. Combined with, from everything I've heard, just a great personality and a fun sense of humor. You had Francona talking about that as well. So definitely a big loss.
Marty Brenneman compared Dave Parker to John Wayne just in terms of his presence, of that kind of a bravado and presence. And you hear so many people say he was intimidating. Marty told me a few years ago, he goes, he was menacing. And that's a good word, and it's a good description of Dave Parker. So just in honor of Dave Parker, wanted to run through some of this. You mentioned Terry Francona. Terry Francona and Barry Larkin were both teammates in Cincinnati with Dave Parker. So here's their take on the Cobra.
Remember being a young kid watching him make that throw. I think it was in the Kingdome in the All-Star game. And then to get to play with him, that's pretty cool. He was funny. Man, you could mess with him. Not too much, I know he was sick, and we all did. I wished he could have been in Cooperstown this summer to get his Hall of Fame plaque. I know how I felt about it. I can't imagine how he would have.
He was, in my opinion, one of the best players in the history of the game, and certainly dominant at one particular time. I think he won a batting title. I don't know about MVP, but I'm certain he was in the running for that multiple times. He was a Gold Glover. He did a lot in all phases of the game, and more than that, he was a leader. He was a leader. He was a winner. All of that checks the boxes for me, and the amount of time that he was able to do it to be a Hall of Famer.
I know Barry Larkin knows this, but here are the numbers. 19 seasons, 7-time All-Star, back-to-back batting titles, 77 and 78. He was the MVP in 78 and may have actually had a better season in 85 and didn't win the MVP. 2 World Series rings, 3 Gold Gloves, 3 Silver Sluggers, and got to play for his hometown team. So the first part of his career in Pittsburgh was unbelievable, the We Are Family Pirates, but he got to come back and play for his hometown team, the Reds, and he said playing on those teams for Pete Rose were 2 of the best years of his entire career. So here's an interview. This is from an interview I did with Dave Parker back in 2014, not long, less than 2 years after the Parkinson's diagnosis. Here's a couple of pieces of sound from Dave Parker, starting with him on his return and getting the chance to play for the Cincinnati Reds.
As a kid, I always dreamed of being a Cincinnati Red because I grew up a street over from Crosley on Poplar Street, and we used to play stickball against Crosley Field Wall. And the dream of a kid is like to always play for the team that you lived in, the city that you lived in.
He got that chance. And those weren't the best Reds teams, but you can look at the time frame of when he was here in the mid to late 80s, and it was kind of setting the stage for 1990. Some of the young players that he influenced, Barry Larkin, Eric Davis, those types of players. And so I think Parker, even though he didn't spend most of his career in Cincinnati, has a pretty prominent place in the history and the success of the franchise.
One thing I didn't realize until today, just how long he played, just the longevity of the career that was there and what that reflected of the impact he made on the field and then around the game over the course of an era transcending maybe a couple different eras. Definitely notable.
Yeah, a 5-tool player, truly, at about 240 pounds was Dave Parker. And when I did that interview with Parker at his house back in 2014, I was in awe. It was some of those moments that you have, Chaz. We talk to a lot of people, but a few of them are different, and I was in awe. This was Dave Parker. This was the Cobra. And that conversation that we had, we talked about a lot of different things, and I learned a lot about him. And I also learned that he says what he thinks. He doesn't shy away from topics. And when the topic of the Hall of Fame came up back in 2014, he was very clear and very blunt that he believed he belongs in baseball's Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And it was going to take a while before that vote finally got across the finish line. It is there now, but here's what he said back in 2014 when we discussed his Hall of Fame candidacy and the fact that he wasn't in yet.
That would be the closing chapter. I'm going out and play golf until I die, if that takes place in peace.
He was thinking about that day, and now the only good news here to share, Chaz, is that he's in the Hall of Fame. He knows that he's in the Hall of Fame, but it's going to be sad next month at Cooperstown that Dave Parker doesn't get to make that speech, that Dave Parker doesn't get to soak up that applause at Cooperstown. About a month before induction, Dave Parker is gone, but what a great Cincinnati Red and a great ball player. And I'm glad we got to share some of those stories from back in the day. Chaz, at the ballpark over the weekend, more than one person came to me at the Reds Live post-game set and said, "Hey, when's the next Power Stacks drop? And on Sunday, I said, hey, tonight, you're going to hear it then. The
Hi to
community
those people. Thanks
What's
for
that?
coming.
That's
I said
right.
hi to those people. Thanks for talking to them directly here on the show. Hello.
That's right. And I told him, I said, well, hey, tell somebody, help us spread the word, share with a friend. So continue to do that. The X page at Power Stacks Pod, the email powerstackspod@gmail. And I'm making a promise on this show. I'm making a promise that I'm going to be better on the Power Stacks Pod email. So if you've sent an email or you plan to, I'm going to be better about that. And I'm going to get on that this week and do that. So as we look at that for our show, the Reds are looking at the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park. And you're looking at Chase Burns for a second start. Set up this series for us.
Well, I think you start with Burns. You start with an opportunity to continue to kind of catapult some momentum. What better way than for one, Burns on the mound? Two, can Burns build on maybe the one area he wasn't as sharp at, which was that second time through the order and that adjustment process later in games. Then in general, just like, you know what my preview for this road trip is? The Reds are playing fun baseball. Watch the Reds. Enjoy the game. Like, this is what it's for sure. It's for the playoffs in October. But this is a good time to just sit down to watch the Reds. It's fun baseball. They're good. This is a good spot to be for anyone who's kind of around the Reds right now.
I would concur, Charlie Goldsmith. Enjoy Boston. Chaz is going to be at Fenway this week. That'll be part of the next Power Stack, so I look forward to that. Thanks for checking out the show. Tell a friend, and we'll see you next time.